There are moments when silence feels heavier than pain, not because nothing is happening, but because everything is happening inside you, and it feels like no one notices. You pray, not loud prayers, not dramatic ones, just quiet words whispered between breaths. God, are you there? And the silence remains. You still wake up every morning. You still do what needs to be done. You still smile when someone asks if you're okay. But inside, there is a growing question you never say out loud. Do you see me at all? Because it doesn't feel like rebellion. It doesn't feel like doubt. It feels like being invisible. You watch others talk about answered prayers, about miracles, about doors opening, and you're standing there, faithful, waiting, holding on, yet untouched, unnoticed, unseen. Sometimes the hardest part isn't waiting. It's wondering if your waiting even matters. If your tears land somewhere, if your prayers reach beyond the ceiling, if your name is still known in heaven. You don't feel angry at God, you feel forgotten. And that pain is quieter, but deeper, because when God feels distant, you start questioning your worth without realizing it. Maybe I'm not important enough. Maybe I'm asking for too much. Maybe others matter more. And slowly, silently, you begin to shrink your prayers. Not because you stop believing, but because you're tired of hoping and feeling unseen. If this is where you are right now, standing in faith, but feeling invisible, you are not weak, you are not broken, and you are not alone in this silence. Because there is something about this moment that most people don't understand yet. And it's not what you think. What hurts most isn't that God feels silent. It's that he doesn't explain himself. If he said wait, you would wait. If he said not now, you would understand. But instead, there is nothing, no sign, no reassurance, no clear direction, just days passing. And silence has a way of distorting our thoughts. At first, you defend God. He's working behind the scenes. He knows what he's doing. But over time, those words start to feel borrowed, like something you're repeating more than something you actually feel. And slowly, another question creeps in. One you don't want to ask. What if I don't matter enough to be answered? You don't stop believing in God. You stop believing you are seen by him. You start wondering if your prayers get lost somewhere between your heart and heaven. You replay your life in your mind. Did I miss something? Did I disobey without realizing it? Did I fail a test I didn't know I was taking? And the silence gives no correction, no confirmation, no comfort, just space, wide, empty, uncomfortable space. People say, God's timing is perfect. But when you're living inside unanswered prayers, time feels cruel. It stretches moments. It amplifies pain. It turns waiting into a quiet form of suffering. You keep showing up. You keep believing. But something inside you grows tired. Not tired of God, tired of hoping without feedback. Because hope without reassurance can start to feel like foolishness. And still, you don't walk away. That's the part no one sees. You stay. Even when your faith feels thin, even when your prayers sound weak, even when God feels distant, you stay. Not because you're strong, but because somewhere deep inside, you believe that leaving would hurt even more. And maybe that's what makes this silence so painful. Because if God truly didn't care, you would feel nothing. But you feel everything. The ache, the longing, the desire to be noticed, which means your heart is still reaching, still open, still expecting something more. And that tells a deeper story than silence ever could. Because what if the silence isn't absence, but something else entirely? There is a moment when you stop waiting for God to speak, not because you've given up, but because you've exhausted every version of asking. You've prayed with faith, you've prayed with tears, you've prayed with anger, you've prayed with silence, and nothing changed. But then, something subtle happens. You begin to notice that the silence hasn't pushed you away. It hasn't made you colder. It hasn't closed your heart. If anything, it has kept you here. Still searching, still listening, still open. And that realization is unsettling. Because if God were truly absent, why would your longing remain? Absence usually numbs us. It disconnects. It hardens. But this silence has done the opposite. It has sharpened your awareness, deepened your questions, stripped away the easy phrases you once relied on. You no longer believe because it feels good. You believe because something inside you refuses to let go. And maybe that's the part we misunderstand. We assume being seen by God means being answered quickly. But what if being seen means being trusted with silence? Trusted to stay, trusted to endure uncertainty, trusted to grow beyond needing constant reassurance. There is a kind of closeness that doesn't speak loudly. It doesn't interrupt pain. It doesn't explain itself. It simply remains. And maybe God's presence has been there all along, not in the absence of pain, but in your ability to survive it without becoming bitter. You look back and realize you are not the same person who first prayed. You are quieter, more honest, less impressed by easy answers. Your faith is no longer loud, but it is deeper, and perhaps that depth was never meant to be rushed. Silence, then, is not rejection. It is not indifference. It is space. Space for faith to mature. Space for trust to grow roots instead of expectations. Space for a relationship that is no longer built on signs alone. And for the first time, you wonder something different. Not, why haven't you answered me? But, what have you been forming in me all this time? Because being unseen would mean being forgotten. And you have not been forgotten. Eventually, you stop trying to decode the silence. Not because you understand it, but because understanding is no longer what sustains you. You wake up. You go on with your day. You carry your questions quietly. And life continues. Not dramatically. Not miraculously. Ordinarily. And something about that feels sacred. You begin to notice that faith has changed its posture. It no longer stands in front of pain, blocking it. It walks beside it. You still feel moments of doubt, still feel the ache of not knowing, but the panic is gone. The need for immediate explanation fades, because you realize answers were never what held you together. Presence was. You start to live differently, not louder, but truer. You stop performing belief. Stop trying to prove your faith through certainty. You let faith be what it is now, quiet companionship. Some days you speak to God, some days you don't. And strangely, neither feels like abandonment anymore. You understand that being unseen doesn't mean being unloved. It means the relationship has moved beyond constant affirmation, like a child who no longer needs to be watched every second to know they are safe. There is grief in this stage, a real one. Grief for the faith that used to feel easy. Grief for the God who used to feel close in obvious ways. But there is also strength, a steadiness that doesn't depend on circumstances. You learn to carry uncertainty without letting it hollow you out. You learn that faith is not proven by what you receive, but by what you refuse to abandon. And slowly, almost without noticing, your life begins to reflect something new. Not certainty, not clarity, but integrity. Your faith no longer needs to be impressive. It only needs to be honest. And that honesty is what keeps you standing. Because faith that survives silence is not fragile. It is formed. There is a quiet truth that only reveals itself after a long season of waiting. Being unseen by God does not mean being unnoticed. It means being known deeply enough to walk without constant reassurance. What you felt as distance was not abandonment. It was space. Space for your faith to grow roots instead of chasing signs. God did not turn his face away. He stayed close in ways that did not interrupt your growth. He stayed in your endurance, in your honesty, in your decision to remain open even when answers didn't come. You were not ignored. You were trusted. Trusted with silence. Trusted with depth. trusted with becoming someone whose faith no longer depends on outcomes. And if today you still feel unseen, hear this gently. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not failing at faith. Some seasons are not meant to be explained. They are meant to be carried, and you did not carry them alone. God does not always speak loudly, but He is never absent. Sometimes His care looks like quiet companionship, like staying when it would be easier to leave, like holding you steady instead of lifting you out. If this story feels familiar, maybe it found you for a reason. You don't need to fix your faith. You don't need to feel stronger. You only need to remain. Because faith that survives silence is not weak, it is real. And you have been seen every step of the way. If this reflection resonated with you, stay here a little longer. Sometimes being present is the answer we were waiting for.